So how's everyone doing tonight? All right, raise your hand if you're ready to learn how to be a billionaire. Okay, I was actually expecting more hands raised. I'm assuming, so all of you are billionaires already? That's why you didn't need to? Okay, gotcha. So for those of you who do not know me, I am Luke Tannen. I'm the executive director of the Chicago Innovation Awards. I'm also a proud member of the Economic Club, and I'm personally just so thrilled that these two communities have come together, along with Google, who is hosting tonight's event, really to shine a spotlight on innovation, some particularly successful innovators in Chicago, hence the name the Billionaires Club for this evening's event. We have a lot of great speakers. I'm going to very quickly just introduce the first one, who's going to tell you a bit more about the Chicago Innovation Awards. Then we'll have Donna Zarconi, who's the CEO of the Economic Club, along with all our wonderful past winners here tonight who are going to tell you their zero to finish line stories, which we're all excited to hear. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce co-founder of the Chicago Innovation Awards, Tom Kuzmarski. He's also the president of innovation consulting firm Kuzmarski Innovation. He is the adjunct professor at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management for Innovation. He's also written 6 books and has a few more in the works on innovation and leadership. And lastly, he's also the vice chair of the Innovation and Technology Committee, membership committee for the Economic Club. So please welcome Tom Kuzmarski.
Oh my gosh, we're so excited that you're all here tonight, really. So this is the first time ever that the Chicago Innovation Awards and the Economic Club of Chicago have partnered together for a first-time event. So that just makes this so gosh darn exciting. For those of you that don't know, the mission of the Chicago Innovation Awards is to celebrate, educate, and connect innovators of all sized companies. So it's big corporations, it's small startups, it's high-tech, low-tech, and no-tech, it's for-profit, and it's non-profit. So it really is focused on trying in a most inclusive way to really connect all of the amazing innovations that are occurring here in Chicago. 2002 was the year we started. So this is year 15 of recognizing Chicago's great innovators. It's been quite a ride to see. And in your programs tonight on pages 15 and 16 are the logos of the 204 past Chicago Innovation Award winners. And here's the two key numbers I got to tell you about. It's unbelievable. Of those 204 Chicago Innovation Award winners, 100% of them are still in business today over the past 15 years. Is that something or what? And the second is that there's been 34 acquisitions for an exit value of over $62 billion. So if there's any question, right, about whether or not innovation helps to fuel economic growth, I think the Chicago Innovation Award winners have shown that that's the case. The Economic Club of Chicago and the Chicago Innovation Awards share values in terms of our joint belief that it's important to connect people together, to learn from each other, and that's what tonight's event is all about. But the innovators in this city have also become the new job creators. And job creation and economic development is also part of what we're all interested in. To that end, I'm here tonight to also announce a brand new program of the Chicago Innovation Awards. And this stems with our desire to help educate. Illinois Tech is launching a new Saturday MBA accelerated program in concert with the Chicago Innovation Awards. And so if you are a candidate to be selected for the MBA program at Illinois Tech, and you're engaged with the Chicago Innovation Awards, you will receive a $10,000 scholarship towards that MBA program, which is just so great to have this affiliation now with that school. Last thing I'll mention is this. All of us in Chicago need to ask each other all the time, what's your innovation? What are you doing that's new? What's the most important thing that you've done to help create customer or consumer value in the past year? And if we all do that with each other, we will continue to be the best city, the hub of innovation in this country, Chicago. With that, let me introduce Donna Zarconi. Donna is the CEO and president of the Economic Club of Chicago. Prior to that, she was the founder and president of D.F. Zarconi and Associates, and spent 8 years as the president of Harley-Davidson Financial Services. She currently serves on 3 boards at Cigna, the Duchy-Schwarz Group, and CDW, of course, and currently is on the board of the Polsky Center, the Entrepreneurial Center at the University of Chicago, where she also holds an MBA. But I got to give you one personal observation before she comes up, and that's this. In my view, she is really a values-based leader who has done an amazing job of moving the Economic Club of Chicago into the future, and I applaud you for that. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that great introduction, Tom and Luke, and really thrilled to have these great speakers tonight. So excited about it. And I'm delighted to co-host with the Chicago Innovation Awards. It's the first time we've done it. But Luke, Tom are members. Many members are in the audience tonight. It's a natural fit, so really glad to be here. Part of the mission of the Economic Club is to foster connections amongst the top leaders of the city and to encourage dialogue on important issues, whether it's fun things like billionaires and entrepreneurship, or it's issues like crime or income inequity. That's the types of conversations that we have. And so we're thrilled to join with the Chicago Innovations Awards tonight to represent each of our members and to celebrate entrepreneurship. The Economic Club holds a variety of programs over the course of our year. And tonight, this program is being brought to you by our Young Leaders Committee. And we've got members of our Young Leaders Committee that are here. If I could just get them to stand up and take a applause for bringing this program together. Come on. With a special shout out to Alex and Shraddha, who planted the seeds for this great idea right back there. So thank you guys. The Young Leaders Program is designed for our members. Our members run the span of age from young leaders to what we love to call our seasoned leaders. All who can be innovators, by the way, as we know. And so our young leaders are focused on 45 and younger, and this program tonight is designed to help create that community. So what young leaders get from this is a chance to learn from some really accomplished leaders, to mingle with our more seasoned leaders, and to form friendships amongst themselves, which is all what we're trying to do as part of our mission. This past year alone, the club has had a number of different speakers. What we try to do is have an interesting mix. And so we've gone from having a fun evening with Rocky Wirtz and John McDonough with their Blackhawks celebrating the victory there, to a serious discussion with the former Secretary of the Treasury, Hank Paulson, to a fun conversation from Patrick Weitzel, who's the co-CEO of William Morris, WME, IMG. And then also conversations from very great billionaires in their own regard. We just had David Rubenstein, who's the co-founder and co-CEO of Carlyle, and a great philanthropist. So really changing the game on what he's doing there. So that's what we're trying to do with the Economic Club, and so we are thrilled. We have our chair, Eileen Gordon, who is also available to speak, and we've got another program coming up in just a few weeks with Ellen Coleman, who's the retired CEO of DuPont. So a really great variety. And tonight, we are thrilled to have the 4 speakers that we're going to have and hear from tonight, especially because they're significant leaders in their own regard, and they are accomplishing what they're doing right here in Chicago, which is a great city, born and raised here, very proud of our city, and love the energy and innovation that's happening here. Now, speaking of an innovator, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for tonight, and that's Ted Suter. Ted is a 14-year veteran with Google, and he's currently head of industry retail, and he oversees a team that's tasked with helping some of the world's largest retailers position themselves for a digital future. Prior to his role, Ted spent a year in Paris, probably a really tough assignment there, where he oversaw key efforts in Southern and Eastern Europe and Middle East and Africa as the head of international strategic sales and operations. He's also responsible for helping to open and run Google's offices here in Chicago, as well as Dallas and Detroit. And think about when you came to Chicago, what you started with and what you have here today. And thank you so very much for hosting us in these terrific new offices tonight. So I personally know Ted through his leadership roles at the Economic Club. He previously served on our Strategic Planning Council, and he's past chair of our Young Leaders Committee, and he's now on our membership committee. However, Ted is not just doing all this volunteer work for the Economic Club. He's actively engaged in a number of civic organizations. He's vice chair of the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce. He's member of the executive advisory board of the Fritz Nobel School of Hospitality Management at the University of Denver. He is a member of Governor Rauner's Council on Innovation and Competitiveness, and he's a board member of 1871, one of the world's leading business incubators, right, Howard, wherever you are? So let's give a warm welcome to Ted Suter.
All right. That's just ridiculously kind of you, so thank you, Donna. Welcome, everybody. How many people are coming tonight for the first time to Google? Ooh, a lot of you. All right, well, we're psyched to have you guys. This is our new home. We moved from 20 West Kinsey to this wonderful location in November. There are about 650 Googlers in the building. We have floors 5 through 10, which is most of the building. And the teams here primarily are focused on advertising sales, so working with large retailers, large travel companies, et cetera, helping, yes, position them to become more digital. But also, what are they doing about mobile? What are they doing about YouTube, et cetera? We have a decent-sized engineering staff, which is really important. In Chicago, we can't have enough engineers, so we're really proud of that. We've got a bunch of other positions here, and so it's a really representative office of what Google looks like globally. And shout out to Kevin Willer, who was one of the original founders here as well. Thank you, Kevin. So this is really fun because I'm a longtime member of the Economic Club, as Donna mentioned. I'm a longtime fan and part-time collaborator with Chicago Innovation Awards. And as a longtime Googler, to get these groups together, to pull together this incredible panel, I think is going to be really fun for everyone. So not only do we want to hear everyone talk about their entrepreneurial journey, but we want to make sure that you guys get to ask a lot of questions. So the way it's going to work tonight is that I'm going to introduce each speaker one by one. They'll come up, they'll talk 8 or 10 minutes, and then they'll go and sit back down. We'll do that through all 4 speakers. And then I'll come back up and we'll get underway asking a lot of questions. So while you're sitting there listening to these amazing stories, feel free to take some notes and get ready to raise your hand, ask for the microphone, and take some great nuggets back to your individual businesses with you, because tonight is really, really special. Does that sound good? All right. So let's kick it off. So first up, we have Jay Shekhawat. And come on up, Jay. Jay is the founder and former CEO of Fieldglass, a 2008 Chicago Innovation Award winner. Congrats.
Thank you.
Sold the company to SAP in 2014 for over $1 billion. Under Jay's leadership, Fieldglass recruited users in 100-plus companies in 22 languages and emerged as the largest firm in the world in the fast-growing vendor management software category. Jay is a former strategy consultant with McKinsey, a former senior executive at Syntel, and was a co-founder of Quinox. And that's the workout place, right?
Equinox.
No. No, I was kidding. I know that.
Does it show?
He's also a founding member of the Firestarter Fund, serves on the board of 1871, and is on the Technology Membership Committee, Economic Club. So take it away.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'd hold off till I'm done and see if you still feel like applauding at the end of that. But thank you anyway. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of my journey, maybe things you don't normally see in the bio, and then we can save the rest of it for the follow-up questions. What I'd like to start by saying is that I am one of the more unlikely entrepreneurs that you're likely to see. I'm probably a bit of an accidental entrepreneur. I grew up in a military family in India, in a Navy family. My dad was a submarine captain and went on to become the captain of an aircraft carrier and so on. So, when you're a young boy growing up in that kind of family, what's your dream? I mean, there's very few jobs that are cooler than actually being a submarine captain, so that was my dream. But fate has other plans for you, and I eventually found my way to the US as a COBOL developer. And many of you are probably, I see some giving away the whole age thing here. Yeah, COBOL was not a fun language, and I did that for a couple of years. I didn't enjoy it, and I ended up in Detroit, Michigan, actually, at an IT services firm called Centel, which just happened to be run by a husband and wife team that I worked for 5 years. That turned out to be amazing street-level entrepreneurs. And by street level, what I mean is we never used the word entrepreneurship. They were just extremely skilled at charging a little bit more for whatever we did than they were paying. We hated debt, and I learned all about street-level selling from them. It's a skill that became really useful later. I left Centel because I was sort of lost in a way. After 5 years of doing this, there wasn't much more that I was learning. IT services turned out to be quite a grind. It turned out to be a combination of selling staffing services, which was a lot of phone calls and unreturned phone calls. There was an offshore business developing in the early days, so all of that was going on. And I think when I left, it was because there was this deep wellspring of frustration that had started to build up that I couldn't quite place. And I just carried it with me. And when I look back on that frustration later, there were other events that happened that I'll talk about in a second, but I think I became a student of my own frustration. And it was a very good thing. If you can find a way to do that, you actually are able to step outside the emotions of it and the negativity of it and become an observer to something that others are probably feeling too. So I was feeling that. There was nothing I could do. So you do what everyone does when they are confused and they reset. You go to business school, right? And so you go to business school to reset. And I end up here at Kellogg, which was a wonderful experience. For someone like me who was really ready to, to partake of the candy store, so to say, of what Kellogg offered, I had a fabulous time. But I had one dream and one dream only, and that was to join McKinsey and to be a consultant. Completing the journey out of the unfulfilling, in my view, profession I was in. So I did join McKinsey, and it was wonderful for a couple of years, and then this dissatisfaction started to set it again. And I don't know about you guys, but every now and then in life, something happens where if you're tuned into it, there's a little epiphany, and there's a little voice that starts to speak to you and provides you a little insight into yourself and maybe a little peek into your future. And that happened to me at McKinsey. I was sitting in the office of the CEO of a very large financial services company in Chicago with my engagement manager, who's your boss in that setup, next to me. And I had just finished redesigning his entire Salesforce compensation structure, like 16 or 17,000 salespeople. I was only 9 months old in that industry and only a couple of years out of business school. And I have this out-of-body experience where I'm thinking, why are you listening to me? I'm relatively new in your sector, and yes, I'm probably a good analyst and a good student, but so as I processed that, it started to bother me because, the answer is obvious. He's not really listening to me. He's listening to the face of McKinsey, and he knows that the firm will not let me fail, and that's the way the model works. Now, different people might react to that differently. I didn't like it. So very soon after that, I quit, and the idea was, could I write my own story or be part of someone else's story? That eventually led me to the starting of Fieldglass. But if you think of what was happening at that time in the mid to late 90s, the internet as a commercial tool was just coming to life. So the browser, I think, came up in 1995. Netscape came up with the browser. And then very soon after that, the world of the internet, there were basically windows and doors offered up to it. And it was like this Cambrian explosion of startups, if you recall. Amazon was selling books. And what was relevant to me was that there were two firms, Ariba and a firm called Commerce One, that started to teach us that commercial transactions could be done between businesses over the web, right? Before that, the ERPs, the SAPs and the PeopleSofts of the world back then were essentially intended to manage the interactions inside a company. And between companies, it was a cumbersome process that they called EDI, and there were some other ways. But here comes along these two firms. And when that happened, and this is when I was going through this thing at McKinsey, the pieces of the puzzle start to fall into place. Because I had that big pool of frustration that I'd been carrying with me like a ball and chain around my ankle. And I'm glad I was, because it was there. But then the pieces of the solution started to fall into place. And me and, it turns out many others started to think, why couldn't we do this for services? And I jumped off and started Fieldglass and discovered almost immediately that I was the fifth or sixth guy to have this original idea. So, so there we go, right? So that didn't turn out so well. And here I want to make one important point. The rational thing to do would have been to pack your bags and go find something else to do. But I was at this conference when I discovered this, and I'm stuck there for 2 days in Boston, and I start to dig into what these people are doing. And it taught me a lesson that has stayed with me, which is you don't want to just study the problem. You want to study the problem landscape, right? You want to study who else is doing what the trajectories are, what their plans are, what the customers are saying. In other words, what is the definition of the problem that they think they're solving? And after looking at that, I concluded that they had a problem definition that I didn't agree with, right? And in this case, just as a reminder, what Fieldglass does is we built a software platform that helps large companies who buy large quantities of contingent labor and services. We help them manage their engagements with their suppliers, right? That's what we do. So back to our problem space. There were people who had taken a purely procurement view of this world. And they aimed their solution at the buyer, and they said, I'll get you the cheapest services and screw everybody else. Don't worry about the supplier or the worker. So that was one approach. There were others who took a purely HR view of it, and then there were others who said, well, we're the best builders of software because we're from the Valley, and we'll just build in all the best practices, and then you should just use our best practices. Now, I'd sold into these enterprises, and last time I checked, a Fortune 500 company will tell you where to stick your best practices, right? And these are our practices, and if you don't have a solution for our practices, well, you're not getting any further. So all of that is a way of saying that I defined the problem as more of a talent supply chain problem. And the lesson it taught me is that you have to choose every word in your problem definition extremely carefully, right? Because that statement you choose then becomes your map and your compass for many, many years, whether you like it or not. If you don't have the word supply chain in my problem definition, the developers and the tech people and the marketing people ignore the fact that there are suppliers in this business. You never said anything about a supply chain, you just said procurement, right? So we chose those words carefully, and it's an iterative process, and the problem tends to shift on you. So that was an important lesson I learned. From that, the building of the product becomes, in a sense, a shadow cast by the problem that you choose. And depending on your problem statement, then that informs the product. It informs the feature set of the product. It informs how you're going to sell it. And we devised our own methods to get the tech crew and the business crew and the marketing people very engaged, tightly listening to everything. And I remember taking my CTO, who was my first hire, Sean Chow, who really built out the product with his team, on sales calls. Right? I insisted that he be on sales calls so he could hear what the customer was saying. And we would huddle after that and come together, and that's how we built the company. And that's a discipline that has remained at the firm. So what else can I talk about? Years go by. Actually, I want to cover something on the first sale here. If you're doing a B2B business, the first sale is critical because you have to choose a customer that represents your target customer in the long run. And since we were selling into Fortune 500 firms, you've got to close a deal like that. And the first deal we closed was Verizon. And I remember sitting with the top IT person, was a buyer, and he said, I'm one of PeopleSoft's biggest customers. Craig Conway was in my office yesterday, and he has something that is further along than you, and he says he'll give it to me for free. Why should I be talking to you? And I didn't really have a good answer. My inclination was to sort of agree with him, actually. But in those moments of desperation come a different type of creativity, which is you develop your selling techniques, you develop your messaging. And in that moment, our messaging to him was, or rather the words that came out of my mouth was, everything you're saying is true. That's the last you will ever see of Craig Conway on this issue. He's gone, right? Whereas me, I need to make this damn thing work, right? We will make it work. And all I ask you, the greatest gift you can give me is your problem. Define your problem for me and leave me alone, in the proverbial dark alley with that problem. And I will take care of it. Nobody else needs to own your problem. I need to own it. And, there's something like an early adopter, and it seemed to resonate with him. And we won that deal. And versions of that story have played out since then. I think large firms look to startups to see, they test you for, do you really deserve to get my problem? Are you just trying to sell me something? Or are you signing up for this journey, right? Because problems have journeys too. They shift. So I only have a minute or so left here, but I want to wrap up by just telling you a little bit about the exit, the final exit. And here, I want to emphasize the role of luck throughout these journeys. And luck comes in, there's good luck and there's bad luck. And we use that term to refer to an externality that we didn't have any control over. So we call it bad luck or we call it good luck. In 2008, when the financial recession hit, Fieldglass, most people don't know this, it's not in the public domain, but our investors were long in the tooth and we were ready to sell the firm. And we had an offer for $90 million. And we debated it for all of about 5 seconds, and we said yes. Then the market started to unwind, and the offer degraded to 80, 70, so on. Then it was 65, and we still said yes. And then they said 55 with 10 of seller financing, and we still said yes. Right? At this time, somewhere along the way, I had decided I'm going to roll in everything and stay with the business. But the offer was withdrawn because markets got so bad that firm shut down its private equity arm. The only reason we didn't get sold for $55 million was luck, an externality. And what seemed like bad news at the moment turned out to be the best thing that happened to us. So there was that. And then when we finally sold to SAP, the way I positioned it is, maybe we can save it for later, but the sale took place pretty much at the peak of the SaaS company multiples. And this was May of 2014 when the deal closed. 2 months after the deal closed, there was a major correction in the SaaS market, you guys might remember. And it never recovered. And so there you go. That would have been, $200-300 million in value just by accident. So when I look at, what I did or what we did relative to luck, I think it's kind of a 50-50, breakup. So, yeah, it's good to have luck on your side. So with that, I'll stop here. Thank you for listening. Back to you, Ted.
See, I knew tonight was going to be good. You just got a great story that no one knew. I love that. Great insights. Thank you. All right, next up, we have Christy Ross. Christy is the co-CEO and president of Dough Inc., which includes Tasty Trade, which I've been interviewed on. Yes. Many of you have too as well. Howard's on there every week. Where's Howard? And also Dough, which is a financial technology content aggregator. Both of these companies are past Chicago Innovation Award winners. Previously, Christy was a CFO of Thinkorswim, and where she led numerous mergers, acquisitions, and integrations. Thinkorswim was sold to TD Ameritrade for $750 million in 2009. Previously, Christy was a CFO of Automated Trading Desk Specialist, a stock specialist on the Chicago Stock Exchange. Welcome.
Thank you. So thank you for having me. I always start out and I talk a little bit about Tasty Trade and Dough first because most people think that we're a food broker, and we're not. It's actually finance. So under our umbrella, we have these two brands, and I want to talk about both of them just a little bit. Tasty Trade is an online financial network, and we produce 8 hours of live programming every day, and we talk about the financial markets. And our mission is to make finance fun and actionable. And we have about 1,000, really thousands of hours of video on demand and 40 different shows. And our shows appeal to millennials all the way to retirees, and also beginners all the way to advanced traders. So it's really all-encompassing, but we focus on options trading. And then we also have Dough, which is, I'll call it the action part of the fun and actionable in our mission. And it is the front-end trading platform. And we've made trading visual, and we've made it far more interactive and approachable. A lot of times you look at trading platforms out there and you're like, it's pretty scary and there's a lot of numbers and so we tried to make it approachable. We won a Chicago Innovation People's Choice Award in 2013 for Tasty Trade. We started Tasty Trade about 5.5 years ago. And then Dough, we launched in 2014, and we actually won an actual Chicago Innovation Award for Dough. So it was funny because when I saw this, these guys advertised, Chicago Innovation Awards advertised the Billionaires Club, I thought, you know what, when it comes to Thinkorswim, I better make sure I rope in Tom Sosnoff and Scott Sheridan, who were the co-founders of Thinkorswim back in 1999. And I joined them a few years into their journey after they took VC money. And I came in as their CFO. And I had a mission to come in, and as you can guess, the VC wanted me to prepare them to either go public or be bought by a public company. And in the end, we were bought by a public company, TD Ameritrade, in 2009. We took a little while to transition and integration, and then the big question was, okay, what's next? What do we do next? And this was really fun because it was looking back at our careers and saying, what's missing? What's missing in finance? And that'd be fun. And so finance and fun were really an oxymoron. But Tom's like, I think we should do it. And Tom Sosnoff. And so we said, okay. And we said, we're going to launch Tasty Trade. So we started out with a little heavy on the fun because media wasn't our background. Finance and brokerage and trading was. So we hired a bunch of Second City comedians, and it kind of looked like this. We were heavy on the fun, and we did a little bit of finance. We took a lot of customer feedback, and over time, that shifted. So we're heavier on the finance and the research, and we have just the right layer of fun for the engagement of it. People still want to walk away and really learn something. Spending time watching the shows, something they can take away. They've been entertained and all of that, but they still need something to do in their own portfolio. And the other thing is research shows that you retain information so much better when there's a little bit of humor involved. So the other part of that is we also were going to start our business as an online radio show. But we did a lot of research and looked at YouTube at the time. And in 2010, when we were throwing this, the idea around, 2010, YouTube, there was 24 hours of video being uploaded every minute. And we said, okay, we have to go buy cameras. So we ran out, bought cameras, and so we actually ended up launching with video. But it's something that you need to constantly change what you're doing and enhance that, and also like I said, take in customer feedback. So then 2 years into Tasty Trade, we said we really need to ultimately create something more interactive for our customers. It was just watching videos, but we wanted them to be able to sort of play along. And we created the front-end technology, taking everything that we learned from Thinkorswim and from the trading industry, even prior to Thinkorswim, And we wrapped that all together. We built trading technology back at Thinkorswim. Now we were going to do it differently. So we're applying everything we learned over the years, but just delivering something different that's not out there today. The other thing is looking at research. The average age of a brokerage customer was getting older. The average age of a brokerage customer is like 45 to 65-year-old male. And we said nobody new is entering the market. And so I was like, everybody else is marketing to millennials. We need to pull them in, and we need to market to them too. We need to empower the next younger generation to understand and be financially literate when it comes to the financial markets. Too often, people are just handing over their money for somebody else to manage, and then when it plummets, they're not really sure what to do because they're relying on these advisors. So we created the front-facing technology to be, like I said, approachable, something very, very different than what you'd see on other trading platforms. So one other thing I didn't mention earlier, but I've been in and around the trading industry for 25 years and been through just under 20 mergers, acquisitions, and capital raises collectively. And as you pull from all of your experiences that you've learned over the years, it's been so fun and so refreshing to be able to take all of that and dump it into something you have control over every day. So it's rewarding to be able to wake up every morning and go, I can't wait to get to work. I mean, I love my family. I have 3 wonderful girls and wonderful husband. But it's really exciting when you're that passionate about what you do every day and be able to take that to work and create something. So there's a few things that I just want to share in terms of our success. Over time, we have always made sure that our customers have access to us. Because one of the most important things that you can do is open that floodgate to get that customer feedback. We've built a better product because of our customers. And so 3 quick takeaways I'll run through that I think are really, truly pillars of, at least part of our success, and I assume for a lot of other companies too. But getting your product out there, getting it out there quickly so that you can get that customer feedback to see if you have a viable product. They're the ones using it. They're the ones that ultimately you want to please and you want to continue to add new features. So that's something we've always done. We provide our email addresses to all of our customers. It's open access. So the second thing is about raising capital. And raising capital when you can rather than when you need it, I think is vitally important. And that's something that we've done on multiple occasions. Because you don't want to run out of money. You could have the best idea in the world, and if you run out of money to actually make it happen, it's not going to happen. And then the third one is teams. The team that you have really matters. Looking back now, being in the professional, being out, having a career, being in the real world for 25 years, you look at the different people that you've worked with. Again, getting up every day, going into work, you want to be able to work with people that you care about and that you can work through issues with. Tom and I, we're both co-CEOs. We've been together for 12 years. It's so funny because we're co-CEOs and we're kind of the yin and yang. We're opposites, opposing, but yet complementary. And so it's been wonderful. We've actually pulled. We have our CTO from Thinkorswim, Woody Ma, who's been integral in the design behind Doe, and we have a couple other people that also have come on. And recently, we brought over Scott Sheridan, who was one of the founders of Thinkorswim too, for our next venture. I can't talk about that one yet, but I'm just as passionate about that, and it helps sort of round out our whole ecosystem. So thank you very much for having me, and that's it. Thank you.
Customers, capital, and teams. I like that. We'll take note of that. All right. Next up, I'm super excited to introduce Chris Gladwin. Chris founded past Chicago Innovation Award winner CleverSafe in 2004, which he then sold to IBM last year for $1.3 billion. Chris has been the creative force behind the development of the first system to solve the growing global problem of big data storage. Using advances in dispersed information technology, he created a cost-effective, secure solution with limitless ability to scale. Chris led CleverSafe to securing and deploying many of the largest data storage systems in the world and has created more than 1,000 issued and pending patents. Chris is a member of the Board of Trustees of the Illinois Institute of Technology, as well as the Board of Directors of Smart Bet Charities, the Chicago Innovation Awards, and the Chicago Entrepreneurial Center. Chris.
So I was, well, first let me make one comment. I appreciate good marketing, and the Chicago Innovation guys are incredible at it, but if you start a company and sell it for $1 billion or it's worth $1 billion, that doesn't mean you get $1 billion. So let's just be clear on that. And one of the things I'm most proud of with CleverSafe was I was able to put equity in the hands of a lot of great people. You know, a lot of incredible engineers and salespeople and business executives, and you know, the challenge I've had for them is, you know, you're up next. You know, what are you going to do with this wonderful, you know, thing that we've created? And that's true for our investors as well. So as you're building a company, and that's one of the things you want to think about, is what will that legacy be? And that's actually one of the things I'm most proud of. So I was trying to think of how to phrase my comments in an interesting way, and we were just talking as I was sitting down about a hobby that I have called adventure racing. And it's basically a sport, and it's finding your way in unfamiliar territory as fast as possible. And my wife does not at all understand why I do this on purpose. But it's basically a race that you usually do with a team, and at the beginning of the race you get a map, and the map has locations that you have to find. And you know, these controls are like an empty milk carton hanging on a tree in the middle of a swamp, okay? And the next one will be, you know, another milk carton hanging on a tree in the middle of a thorn field that goes on for half a mile. And on and on and on. So you have a whole 8, 10, 12, 24 hours, multiple days of this, depending upon the race. And it's a challenge. But for me, for whatever reason, I think that's a lot of fun. And so what I found in my career is that, you know, the kind of persistence, the desire to really overcome tough challenges with the team and figure out where you are and where you're going, and that's kind of, to a great degree, what my journey has been like. The first big company I started was a company here in Chicago called Cruise Technologies. And I thought, the way that you make a really good company is you find the technically hardest problem to solve, and you solve that. But what I didn't understand is that doesn't matter if the market doesn't want to buy it. And essentially what we built were wireless tablet computers in the 90s, and that was bad. And we were so far ahead of our time that, like, customers didn't have internet. And we were like trying to sell them routers, you know, so they could use this thing. They didn't have wireless, so we made wireless gateways. Like, if you're selling that as accessories to try to get people to buy your product, you're not in a good time. We were like 2 decades early, and so that was not ideal. But it was a good learning experience. So the next company I started was Music Now. And Music Now, I would assert, was one of the most historically challenged companies ever. We executed on everything we could do, some of which was considered impossible, and we proved it was not a great business. So Music Now is a company that we were the dominant business-to-business supplier of digital music services, kind of in the pre-iTunes era. Like everyone's music service, Best Buy, Clear Channel, Charter, Microsoft. Behind the scenes of all those was us. We licensed all music. We architected the legal approach to digital content licensing that now everyone uses. We built all the technology. We had all the distribution in the world. And like I said, without a doubt, we proved it was not a good business. On the supply side, we had exclusive suppliers. So if you want Bruce Springsteen, you're going to go visit Al Smith at Sony Music. And Al doesn't even have email, okay? And you're going to try to explain to him that people are going to play music on computers. He doesn't get that, right? And on and on and on. And literally, we had to aggregate, like, Yoko Ono is involved in, like, can we get the rights to, it was crazy. But we did it, but we had unwilling suppliers. They made it as hard as possible for us to distribute their goods and pay them. And while we were doing this, along came Napster, along came Kazaa. And even then, they were still not willing to embrace us as the legitimate giving them money supplier and made it incredibly difficult. On the demand side, when you're in high school and you read about capitalism, even a libertarian will tell you that a government needs to enforce property rights in order for commerce to exist. We experienced that reality that in our market, we didn't have enforcement of property rights on the demand side because the alternative to paid licensed services was unlimited free unlicensed content, Napster. Now, the Supreme Court did rule unanimously that that was illegal literally 8 years later, right? So that didn't help. But what we learned from those things were if you go about things in a certain way, you conduct yourself, hardworking, honest, you're really trying to do the right thing, that even if those don't work out, we had a reunion, a Music Now reunion a couple years ago, the first one ever, like 10 years later, and everyone said that was the best place they ever worked because we had a blast. There were 13 times we had less than a payroll of cash, and we found a way. But like people were having a blast because we just went about it in a certain way. So those things really help with CleverSafe. And one of the challenges for CleverSafe, everybody thinks, oh, this is awesome, look what happened. But we went 6 years before we actually had a real customer, and we had like 30 people on average. Try running a company with 30 people for 6 years and no revenue. And part of the challenge for CleverSafe was the technology that the whole world had been using for large-scale data storage is a method that hadn't changed in 50 years. And it had the property that the more you stored, the worse the system got. It got a little bit less reliable, a little bit less secure, a little bit slower, a little bit less cost-efficient. And as storage was growing 10 times every few years, it was totally out of gas. And we saw that. And so it's getting worse and worse. And we developed a whole nother method that had the property that we got better and better as the system got bigger and bigger. And so it was going to cross over. The problem we had was that meant our first customers had to be the largest customers in the world. And we're selling not this little toaster or blender or refrigerator that they put in the snack room. We're selling them the back-end storage of everything in the whole enterprise. And these are enterprises doing things like national security, the banking system, enterprises whose value is hundreds of billions of dollars. And we're saying, okay, this is totally different technology that no one uses from a totally new company you've never heard of, but we want to bet you to bet your entire enterprise on it. So that was a challenge. But it had the effect that the hardest customer to get was the first one, and then it got easier, and then it got easier, and then it got easier. So that's what we got to experience at CleverSafe, and kind of the tenacity to get through that, was stuff I learned at those prior businesses and learned from adventure racing. Thank you.
I love that, and I love that you too are having fun at work getting through all these challenges, so we love that. Last but not least, we've got Adam Hughes. Adam is the Chief Operating Officer of Avant, a 2015 Chicago Innovation Award winner, valued at over $2 billion. When you have $2 billion of anything, things are going well. Avant is an online marketplace lending platform that is changing the way consumers obtain credit by lowering the costs and barriers of borrowing. Adam is responsible for overseeing both the US and UK's business operations and marketing efforts. Avant has secured more than $1.7 billion in funding to date and has more than 480,000 loans have been issued through its platform. Avant was named to Forbes America's Most Promising Companies list for 2015, as well as their next billion-dollar startups list. So, welcome.
Thank you. And Ted, I think we shop at the same place, the blue blazer, pink look. Well, thanks everyone for having me. I'm super humbled. I mean, the speeches there were just incredible. I'm only going to talk about Avant because that's really all that I've done, but it's been a phenomenal 3.5 years. Again, Adam Hughes, I'm the CEO at Avant. We're an online consumer lending marketplace. And really our goal, again, is to lower the costs and barriers of borrowing for people around the world. And we're really focused on what we call the everyday and middle-class consumer. And I would define that as someone who has a FICO score, a credit score of 600 to 700, and a household income of $50,000 to $100,000. So it's really the everyday consumer here in America. And that customer has really had poor experiences in lending and obtaining credit, as well as bad products since really 2008. So a little bit about myself first. I was employee number 1 at Avant. I really have 3 roles today. I'm head of operations, marketing, and products. So what does that mean? On their operations side, we have 900 employees here in Chicago. 500 of them are on our customer service team. So that does all of our customer service for a new customer saying, tell me more about Avant, to an existing customer with a question on their loan. All of our verifications, so verifying ID, income, and employment, so we can get comfortable funding that loan. Collections to get that customer back on track. QA, training, as well as a strategy and automation component that sits on top to make sure that we're providing best-in-class customer experiences and making sure we're streamlining that process. Funny note there, of that 500, I was employee number 1 there. So what was really important, going back to Chrissy's point, was just really understanding that customer, because I was the one talking to that customer every single day. And it got to a point where the customers in the early days, because we couldn't afford to hire anyone, would be like, wow, Adam, I'm speaking to you again. Is there anyone else that works there? But what was really helpful is I got to know exactly what that customer wanted, what they didn't want, and what was important. And that allowed me to go to my tech team and say, this is exactly the way we need to build the products. Job number 2 at Avant is head of marketing. So that's new customer acquisition, customer experience, retention, and brand. Today, we've now grown to have 500,000 customers. We've lent over $3 billion in the US and UK, 2.8 here in the US, 200 million in the UK, just launched in Canada. And it's really been a combination of, again, just understanding that customer, where that customer looks to obtain credit, how can we make that better, and really making the product our brand. And again, going back to Chrissy's point, but I like to say we've spent $0 on brand marketing and really traditional brand marketing, right? We've taking the approach of making our product really transparent and something that the customer loves, that they're coming to us, they're recommending their friends, and then that word of mouth really is our brand, and we really stand behind that. And finally, job 3 is product. So we talked about the online loan product, which we've lent, again, over $3 billion. And the customers love Avant. They're coming to us and saying, we love Avant. We have 80 NPS scores, 95% satisfaction rates. Can you help me with other forms of credit, which, again, products can suck and the experiences can suck, and can you help me and put an Avant spin on it? So, and they asked us to help them with auto and credit card and mortgage. So we're really proud to announce that we just launched an auto refinance product 2 weeks ago, and that's going to allow a customer to refinance their current auto loans into better rates, lower their monthly payment. And 80% of our Avant customers have an existing auto loan, so it's just really relevant, great for the customer, great for us. We're planning on launching a credit card product in August, and what's important about that is, again, for that 600 to 700 FICO score consumer, there's just not great products out there. You have Capital One, they don't really focus on that space that much. The other products out there, high fees, bad experiences. So our goal is to, again, have a really transparent online no-fee product that the customer can apply, get an instant decision, and get approved real fast. So let's go back to 2012 quickly. So, and really where the Avant opportunity was born. You had the crash in 2008, and banks had completely pulled out of lending to anyone below a 700 credit score. Al Goldstein, our CEO, John Sun, our Chief Risk Officer, Paul Zhang, our CTO, and myself really saw an opportunity where, again, you have 50% of the US population having a credit score below 700, and they just don't have, an affordable product to go to if they need credit, to consolidate, higher interest credit card debt, to get access to capital or access to credit if you need to fix your car, if you have a home repair. And so we launched our first loan in January 2013. Again, it was me on the phone talking to these customers. And we got to know them really well. And we figured out that these customers did not like origination fees, so we didn't do origination fees. These customers hated prepayment penalties. They wanted to pay back their loan when they wanted to and save interest, and so we didn't do prepayment penalties. This customer wanted to be able to have all these self-service options themselves on their phone. So we rolled out a really slick app, and our customers now can modify their payments and pay off their loan and change their payment schedules. And it was really because, again, the four of us were sitting in a supply closet, literally, with no windows, and talking to these customers, and just had to make it work, and really had to make this product fit this customer's needs. That I think we were able to be really successful. So 4 of us grew to 950 people because the customers loved the product. On top of that, outside of the growth in Chicago, we have a small office in LA. Chicago's always going to be home, but we had to take advantage of some of that West Coast tech talent, and it's a lot easier to have someone move from San Francisco to LA than it is to have them move from San Francisco to Chicago. Shocking, I know. We also have a small team in London, but the goal is always to have our core team here. On top of the growth, we've been fortunate enough to, because of the customer growth from 1 customer to 500,000, to raise capital, and that's really important for us because we are a lending business. So we've raised. It's a little bit dated in there. We've raised $3.6 billion to date in terms of funding, $650 million in equity dollars. The last 2 rounds, some pretty big names, Tiger Global and General Atlantic led our last round. We also have some investors that led our Series A and Series B in California by the name of August Capital. And then we also have Chicago investors. Victory Park Capital is an investor. And so we've been able to go to both coasts as well as in Chicago and really tell the Avant story, which we think really stands out, and get our investors to really believe in us and give us some great funding. On top of that, we have warehouse facilities set up. We had forward flow arrangements set up for whole loan buyers. And really our strategy is to have 50% on balance sheet of our loans and 50% off balance sheet. And we think that's really important and very different from what our competitors do, because we want to eat what we cook, right? I think it's extremely important to hold at least 50% of loans that we write on our balance sheet to make sure that credit performance is our number 1 priority. There's been a lot going on, but our goal is to really stay focused in 2016. We really have 5 goals we always say to the entire team. And it's getting tougher and tougher to know who everyone is at our company now that we're so big. But I think everyone can recite these 5 goals at Avant if you were to ask them. And number 1 is to raise an additional $2 billion of capital. We're writing $250 million of new loans a month at this point, so that capital is critical to keep growing. Number 2, again, moving from just a personal loan company, which we are today, into multi-products. So launching our auto product, which is only live in California today, moving that to a national presence by end of year. Number 3 is launching our credit card in August. And again, just talking to customers, just the products out there, it's really silly. So excited about what we can do in the credit card space. Number 4, we just launched the first ever bank partnership in this space. The 13th biggest bank in the U.S., Regions Bank, $120 billion in assets. Really came to us and said, hey guys, we're declining every single customer that comes to us below a 700 FICO score. These are customers that have deposit accounts with us. It's a horrible experience. So can you, Avant, provide the tech to us to provide a best-in-class online loan experience to the customers that we're servicing, the 700-plus community, and then we can refer customers over to you. And it's a no-brainer because it's a complementary product. We have much better tech than them, so just announced that last week and going to be going live with that in September. And then goal number 5 is just to really continue to grow our core business as well as adding on loyalty programs. So we have an existing loyalty program. We have free credit scores for our customers. We have credit education, and continue to do more there. And just making sure that this customer isn't just taking credit options from Avant, but they're actually improving their lives. A couple things outside of that, just to summarize what I've really learned. I've learned a ton in the last 3.5 years. Number 1 is the team. Al Goldstein, our CEO, and really my mentor over the last 9 years. Working with him, working with John, working with Paul, the other co-founders, you need a team that works extremely well together, that trusts each other, and that's really good at what you do in your individual lanes. John and Paul are perfect SAT kids, smartest guys in the room, brilliant tech and data guys. Myself, I know how to do operations and marketing for an online business. Al's good at everything, but is also really good at raising money. And in the beginning, when we didn't even know if this product was going to fit and who's going to write us a check to keep going. All of us just continue to execute at a really high level. And then you bring in lieutenants around yourself that really buy into that same message of, hey, the Avant opportunity is absolutely massive. And if we continue to just be really focused on that, we don't care if we have fancy office space, and we don't care if we have windows, which, again, we didn't have for a year and a half. It's just let's continue to execute on this gigantic opportunity and grow a big business here. Number two, again, and not to steal Christy, but just our product was our brand. We haven't done any Super Bowl ads and anything like that. It's been 100% referral-based and performance marketing. By performance marketing, it's our affiliate partnerships, it's our digital campaigns, it's our direct mail, it's our radio, direct response. Actually, trackable, cost of acquisition to I'm going to spend this amount of money, get this customer. I think it's at some point we'll layer on some more traditional brand things. We're just not there today, and firmly believe in the last 3.5 years it was the right call to make sure we were attracting customers and really optimize those individual marketing flows. And then finally, the last thing I would say is just the in-house component of not outsourcing your business, especially the critical functions. We took the approach, and again, different from our competitors, and we certainly had the conversations of, should we outsource our tech in the beginning? Should we outsource our underwriting? Should we outsource our customer service? And we chose to keep those all in-house. And I think that was really important because, again, talking to those customers, which I was every day, and just understanding what was really important to them, I could lean over to Paul and have him make changes with our product. And then on the underwriting side, John making the investment on the infrastructure, which allowed us to deploy models in a matter of weeks instead of months, and building that in-house from day one. And finally, on the customer service side, it was really tempting to outsource from the go. It's certainly less expensive, right? But we're in a heavily regulated industry, and being able to walk 2 blocks away from a corporate office and take investors, take regulators, take partners, and show them exactly what we're doing in the front lines, there's a real value there. And actually showing, hey, we are actually talking to these customers every day. We're verifying themselves. We're getting these customers back on track. So really the combination of that is what I've learned. I'm extremely excited to see where Avant goes. I think our edge is we don't think we've really done anything yet. We've hired a lot of people. We've raised a lot of money, but we think we've just really scratched the surface, and really excited to see where we go from here. Thanks.
You stay up there. And, sorry, I got your funding number wrong. I got it on Google or something.
You want me here?
You just can't trust. That's fine. You guys, why don't you come on up? And while the audience is formulating their questions, I'm going to kick off with one. We're doing a pretty good job on time. We have 22 minutes. Does that sound about right? I wanted to start with you, Chris, and you briefly touched on this when you were talking. This was a quote from a recent Cranes article. You said, "Still, there were times when it appeared that the money might run out. Sales always took longer than expected. It was 5 years before CleverSafe had its first customer. Some clients tested its software for years before buying." So I think that that's probably a similar theme that many entrepreneurs go through, the long time periods without any revenue or without being profitable, possibly. Maybe clients that kind of milk it as long as they can. What's your advice for the entrepreneur who is going through something similar, stressful time, little to no revenue? They're looking at the watch saying, when's our 18 months up? What do you say?
In some ways, it's easy to manage a business that has metrics that really reflect the health of the business. It's numbers on, you can see this one got bigger than that one. That's good. But it's harder when you're really looking at more subjective measures. But that doesn't mean you can't analyze them. So even though it took a while for the revenue to get rolling, there were other signs that just kept getting better and better. One was just the demand kept growing and growing. In terms of data creation, there was just no end in sight. Two, we were looking at our competitors, and so even though we weren't, even in the early days when we hadn't begun really selling and deploying, our competitors were actually getting further behind. They weren't making these investments, and we could just see our capabilities distancing further away. And the feedback from other things from customers was still positive. So I guess in summary, it was we were able to find other measures that allowed us to, although it was harder to do, to understand that the business was progressing, even though the revenue hadn't started. Now, I'm not recommending that, but it just happened to be how it worked out for us.
Any of you guys want to add on to that?
I would just add that you look for measures, so it's the same story here, not quite 6 years, but you look for measures of usage, whatever those might be, and you look for measures of other forms of happiness, like you didn't get kicked out. That's so people who are not unplugging the software, even though they're not sort of paying you full amounts. And the third is you revisit the problem. Is this problem still acute? So you look for signs that the problem is still meaningful. Because that will eventually translate into usage and then translate into money if you've got the business model right.
Sure. And you had a great story about just deciding to sell the company and trying to figure out at what value, and it went down, down, down. Sometimes people might look for an exit for financial reasons. Some of it might be desperation. Other times it might be scale. And your example, you guys sold to SAP. All of a sudden you have access to their global sales force.
Right.
Like that can really accelerate a business. At what point do you decide to go for the scale or go for the financial exit, or what goes on in your mind?
When you've taken venture money, and we'd taken $38 million in venture money, there become different objectives and points of view around the table here, as most of you guys know. And we had those debates along the way, and it had gotten pretty bad at one point. I remember a moment when just the way the preferences and things worked, I ended up, there was one board meeting, I took my keys out of my pocket, I put them on the table dramatically, and I said, you wanted to own this thing? Well, you own this thing now. And I'm going to show up here tomorrow morning, and you can, I'll wait by the phone for a phone call, and someone's going to call me and tell me what to do. If there's no phone call, there's nothing for me to do. So it was all, it was drama, but we were able to sort of reset. We were able to reset that. Was probably a little bit over the top, even for those standards. The final exit, though, you want to be bought. You don't want to be sold. I'll just tell you that.
I love that.
You want to be bought. You want to complete somebody's business plan and product roadmap. And these guys, Chris will obviously have stories of this, but we were able to position this as the piece that completes the workforce solutions that they were bringing to the table. And I remember telling the SAP guy, and actually even the gentleman from IBM, you guys have to stop saying you have a workforce solution, because here's the stats that say 40% of the workforce is contingent. So you should say, well, I have a 60% solution. And it's sort of a cheeky way of getting their attention, but that's when they pay up.
Love that. Christy, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at just raising, whether you're raising capital or whether you're looking to be bought, you do want to look more for strategic reasons. I mean, yes, there will always be partners that are in this for the financial aspect, but if you've put the right team together to begin with, you sort of have alignment on what your end goal is. And the end goal is in our case, is to empower the do-it-yourself investor and really make a difference in finance and sort of change the way people look at it. We had sort of that same mentality even on the think or swim side. And so looking at partnering up with someone, it's far more rewarding. Forget the money, put the money aside, but when you can actually complete the puzzle and know that the end customer is going to benefit from it, then you really feel like you've accomplished something.
Sure. And I think when you're talking about helping the customer and the end result, Adam, you must get a ton of satisfaction in your job being able to make loans to people, making it easier for them, and thinking about how those loans might be improving their lives, maybe it's improving their business, whatever the case may be. Do you have any stories that kind of stick out of how your customers have benefited from your guys' idea?
I mean, every day. A combination of, a customer that's able to consolidate their higher interest credit card debt, just make their monthly payments cheaper, to, my car broke down, I need to fix it in order to get to work. It really spans the gamut, and it's really rewarding to see people being able to improve their lives, improve their credit histories, which has massive impact through this Avant product. And when you think about free credit scores and reporting to the bureaus and an average of 20 points of FICO improvement after you complete your Avant product, no doubt it's been exciting to see and hear the stories that our customers send to us all the time, as well as our survey data.
That's great. That's great. So I'd love to take some questions from the audience. I know you guys have a ton. We have a couple people running around with microphones. So we had the very back row. Is that Michael? Michael Cross in the back there.
Could you talk a little bit more about two things? One, what are you doing at IIT to try to extend this innovation culture in Chicago? And could you talk a little bit more about why you shared the wealth with your colleagues? It's a great thing.
Well, thanks for asking those questions. So I've spent a lot of time, and I think there's been a lot of conversations among the people in this room about kind of how to build a thriving technology ecosystem in Chicago. And all the data I can find, and there's not a lot of it, really what you see in Chicago is we've done a lot of work to get to really be a second-tier technology ecosystem globally. And our issue now is not, do we have first-tier quality companies? We do. There's 4 of them represented on this stage. The only thing that differentiates us between where we are and being in the top tier is we just need more of this. If there were 5 times, 10 times as many of these companies, this conversation would be over. We would be in that tier. So then you get to, well, how does that happen? How do you get there? And there's a couple ingredients that are just essential. One is you don't have an example of a top-tier technology ecosystem in the world that doesn't have a top-tier computer science department in a technically-oriented school as a part of that. It just doesn't exist, and I wouldn't suggest that we try to be the counterexample. And why that happens to a great degree is that's your fuel. I mean, you just need that kind of talent. Now, there's other kinds of talent. There's MBA talent, there's legal talent, there's all kinds of finance talent. We got that covered. I just don't think we have enough tech talent. I mean, if you add up like IBM, CleverSafe's demand, Google's demand, these companies' demand, all the new companies, and you just run the numbers, like how many of these graduates are we going to need? We're going to need more. So the motivation in that goal that I made, that gift that I made, was to not only help that department move to the top tier, but also just to be bigger and to produce more. And there is a correlation between bigger computer science departments tend to be better. And then I've challenged the other CleverSafe investors to chip in and make that bigger, which they're doing. And then ultimately, we're going to be challenging the whole business and technology community in Chicago to also kind of take it to a level to where to where we really can pull it off. So that was your first question. What was your second question?
Why did you share the wealth?
Oh, why did I share the wealth? I mean, the other thing is, I purposefully wanted in the cap table, people to be seated with shares that I knew. The goal one day is this would happen, and then now we've put, some of the guys like, now they're in a position where they've paid off their college loans, they've paid off their mortgage, they got some, $1 million or $2 extra. Now they really can think about starting a company, and there was a whole group of talented people like that should do that. And you can absolutely bet that as soon as the time is right, they got work to do at IBM still. I'm going to be challenging them like, now it's your turn. Let me see you do it, because you have the skills to do it.
I love that. I love that. Let's go right over here, second hand. You. I was talking to you earlier. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Jay, I have a question about what you mentioned with choose your problem definition very carefully. How does that differ from a traditional value proposition, and why would it be important to think about it in your way as opposed to a traditional way?
So it's kind of a trick question because you didn't tell me what the traditional value proposition was. But I'll tell you what I mean by when you look at, people tend to focus on the product that they have, and the product takes a positive form, and then you start to fall in love with it because it's the thing you're building and so on. But the product, and the set of services around it only exist. They only deserve to exist because they are apparently solving something, right? And what I'm saying is, rather than be a product manager in that sense, be a problem manager. The problem is, takes many forms. And in any ecosystem, that's what I meant by the problem landscape. You can have different camera angles at the problem and end up with completely different companies. Some will be, maybe one will be successful. And so I would say, bringing a deep set of experience to the problem landscape where you've marinated in that space, for a while, because the real insights of a problem are only available to someone who's, soaked in that problem for a while and really feels it at a visceral level. The product will follow, right? The product will follow if you understand the problem and you choose your problem properly.
Agreed.
All the way in the back.
My name is Megan Mrazek, and I focus on crisis and risk management and corporate reputation at Edelman PR. So my question is an open question to the group. Knowing that startups have a very unique risk set, did you encounter a crisis that threatened either reputation or operations, and how did you overcome that?
That's a good question. Chrissy.
Yeah. Crisis, I would say we actually came to the table with a little bit of a different business model that, that ultimately we realized wasn't going to bring us, to the end goal, or wasn't going to be viable. What we did right is we didn't do a lot of PR around it or push around it until we got to a certain point. And I would say that probably that pivoting is something that was critical for us. And we went out and got we actually were approached because it was working for one of our major customers. We were approached with an offer we ultimately couldn't refuse, and we said, okay, we'll go exclusive for a while. But it was a really tough time. I would call it definitely a crisis within us, within the company, to say, hey, we really ultimately need to pivot here. But it also, as long as you sort of stay with your mission and it doesn't go against your mission, it's one of those things that you know you're going to come out on top if your focus is in the right place, and you're still heading down that path. You can still pivot and still have that same, that's hit the same end goal.
Sure.
So.
Adam, what about you guys? There's a lot happening in the fintech space. I've read headlines about how cities exploring virtual reality. You've got markets that are up and down. How do you guys deal with the reality of today's markets and the potential changes that are coming?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. The markets have been extremely challenging lately, especially if you're trying to raise the amount of capital that we are. That being said, we love where we sit, especially when we compare ourselves to our competitors. Again, not to be too long-winded about it, but we go back to our hybrid funding structure, where we've taken the approach of, putting a lot of plumbing in place on our balance sheet as well as off balance sheet, and raising the equity when we did, has allowed us to be really flexible when it comes to taking our time with growth, right? For the new products I mentioned with auto, we want to be really conservative and gather data and then really step on the gas for 2017. Credit card's probably a 2018 product. In our business, it's really important that you gather that data, you create a sophisticated credit model, and then you step on the gas. You don't do that too early. So for us, it's you hear no tech IPOs in 2016. There's only 11 total, and for a lot of people, that's really scary. But for us, we've always taken the position that we want to be ready when the time is right, no matter what the market is, and not need the money. And I think we've done a good job of that, of just really preparing and taking good deals, and just being really focused on manageable and conservative growth.
Sounds like smart management. Let's have a couple more questions right here in the front.
Hi, I'm Zach Cates, and I'm an entrepreneur. So I have a question for you, Adam, but it's really for all of you.
Sure.
So you said that you were employee number one, and then you grow to 500 plus employees. So I'm really curious at how, as your company starts growing rapidly, where did you start getting that knowledge or that experience to run that many people? As I could imagine, more people, more problems. Where did you get that experience from?
It's a great question. I'm still going through it. I don't think anyone can figure out the best way to go from 4 of us to 950 people. It's really challenging. It's challenging for me. What I would say is I have really good lieutenants. And when I talked about my individual lanes of operations, marketing, product, also oversee HR, and just have really good people there that have really good people. And I think it's really important that you bring in people on the team, especially when we weren't paying each other a lot of money and it was heavily equitized in the early stages, that are really bought into that mission. And I think when you do that and you bring in the right fit that can work really well together, I just need to trust these guys to do it, guys and girls. So I've been fortunate enough to have an amazing team. They've, I've certainly empowered them to do the same, and they've built, amazing teams. But it's still really hard. I mean, I have to spend a lot of time with individual teams, and when, just learning people's names is a challenge, right? So we're still working through it, but it's definitely the team, and it's certainly not me. So it's just having really good people and being fully bought into the mission.
I'd like to add to that too, is I think communication is so key. Continued communication and transparency really helps pull everybody together, and it's sort of a circular communication, as well as being very clear on accountability. Because if you're just, running flat and throwing, you're having communication but not saying, hey, you got this one and you got this one, stuff sort of, wanes. So communication is absolutely, top of the list.
So we have time for one more question, and I'm going to take it myself. But these guys are going to be around for a few more minutes. We have a hard stop at 8 o'clock because the building closes. But we do have time for a little more networking and such outside. But Jay, this one's for you, and for everyone else, of course. When you were talking, it really struck me when you said how you were at your client when you were working at McKinsey, and you thought to yourself, why are you listening to me? And it made me think back to the whole idea around imposter syndrome that many people face, seasoned professionals, entrepreneurs, et cetera, saying like, why me? Or why are they listening to me? Or am I ready for this? And I feel like there's probably a lot of people who should, as Chris was saying, now it's your turn, people who should make that step, but they're like, oh, that's just not me. There's this imposter syndrome-ish thing happening. How do you get people to just take that step and not self-doubt?
The imposter syndrome is real, actually. And if you take what entrepreneurs do, and if you set aside the numbers which can be counted, which actually show progress, and if you think of your work as an artist might, there is no obvious sign of progress, when you're creating a work of art. And this struck me because I was visiting Van Gogh's bedrooms the other day, and he's an example of a great artist that, in fact, never in his life thought he was accomplishing anything. He had the ultimate imposter syndrome. He cut off his ear as a result of that. And I have often felt that the role of luck and chance was maybe far greater than I ever gave credit for. And on days, I still feel that.
That's great. Anyone else? All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much. Let's have a round for this amazing panel. Thank you, guys. That was fantastic. And enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.